If I had to choose one controller that I had to keep for the rest of my life, it's probably the 8Bitdo Ultimate controller. The 8Bitdo Ultimate Bluetooth controller is probably the best controller ever made. I mean, when you actually look at it, it is actually really well thought out. It's not just a generic cheap controller. No, rather it's a controller that's designed for people who want to play both the classics and the modern games. And not only that, it's improved a lot of things that other controllers don't have. But before I get into that, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We are trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of August. So definitely every subscribe does help us out. It does look like about 80% of the people watching our videos are not subscribed to us. So definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Like I said, it does help us out. Also leave a comment in the comment section below. We definitely want to have a conversation going on, specifically with this one today, with the 8Bitdo Ultimate controller, on what your thoughts are and if you own one. Without further ado, let's go dive in with my thoughts on the 8Bitdo Ultimate Bluetooth controller. So like I said earlier, it's actually thought of a lot of things, and some things that your actual main controllers don't do. For example, when I look at the Xbox One controller, or Xbox Series controller rather, when you look at the controller, it doesn't really have any back buttons. No, rather you have to go ahead and buy an Elite controller to go ahead and get back buttons. Well, with the 8Bitdo Ultimate controller, you do have the back buttons. Now you might be asking yourself, what is the point of back buttons? What would I use it for? For me personally, rather than have to go ahead and, let's say, push in my thumbstick to go ahead and do like a running motion, I can just map it to one of these buttons and press that so I can start running. Makes things a little bit easier. Yeah, I get it. It's not a necessity, or it's not nothing major, but for me, I do like that. And I know a lot of other people kind of use the back buttons for other things. But that is not the only thing the 8Bitdo Ultimate controller can do. Rather, it can go ahead and basically you can set inputs on here. So for example, let's say you want to go ahead and do the Hadouken, you can go and do the Hadouken motion here. And what would happen is you can map it to the back. So if you want to go ahead and do a Hadouken, you just go ahead and press on the button. There you go. You're easily doing a Hadouken, which is pretty cool. Some people might call it cheating, right? Because you're really getting off a command easily. I personally don't do that with my controller, but it's there if you want it to. I mean, it can make things a little bit simpler depending on what you're using it for, but for me, I don't use that. Now let's start talking about the feel of the controller, right? I kind of jumped ahead of myself and started talking about the back buttons, but let's talk about the overall feel. When it comes to the feeling of the controller, it does feel a lot more like a Switch Pro controller than an Xbox controller. Even though the design might be very similar to an Xbox controller, it's definitely not. Rather, when you actually look at it, where you hold the handles, they actually point more inwards rather than outwards. And to me, that's actually a negative, because for longer gaming sessions, I will admit my fingers do tend to hurt, specifically my pinky fingers, because the way I'm holding the controller and I have it, since everything is pointing a little bit more inwards, I don't know, it just starts hurting over time. So depending on the game that I'm playing, yeah, it does start becoming uncomfortable, but it's not too bad. As far as the triggers go, these triggers are analog. So of course, if you use it as a PCX input to play games like Call of Duty or Fortnite or something like that, anything that actually utilizes the analog triggers, you can definitely use that. When in Switch mode, it will not use analog triggers. So if you're playing something like, Mario Sunshine, guess what? You're not going to be able to handle or utilize the FLUDD the way it was on GameCube controller. No, rather these would just work as your normal digital triggers. You have your L and R buttons up top, and they just function pretty much the same. Your A, B, X, Y's are actually really nice. They're not mushy and they're not too clicky. They're actually like a perfect medium, and I do really enjoy these face buttons. And of course, you have a start and a minus button, or start select, or whatever you want to call it nowadays. You do have the 8Bitdo home button right there, which also lights up when it's turned on. And then you have your profile button. What the profile button does is, if you have, let's say, different mappings of different buttons, you can create 3 different profiles for all those different mappings. So for example, let's say you have this as X input, but you want the profile button to be maybe like for Nintendo or something like that, for ROMs, you can go ahead and create a separate profile just for that if you wanted to. I personally don't really use the feature because I just remap the buttons within emulators themselves, but it is there and it's pretty handy as well. And then you do have the little star button here. The star button would act differently depending on the console or the device you're using. For example, if you're using Nintendo Switch, this will actually work as a capture button. The D-pad is really nice. It's actually what 8Bitdo does very well. I love the way they do their D-pad. It's very classic, very SNES feeling. And honestly, I just don't understand why nobody else has put a D-pad like this in their controller. And then the thumbsticks, on the other hand, these are a huge upgrade. They're using Hall sensors. And Hall sensors, man, they feel different. So what Hall sensors are, it's basically just magnetic sensors inside rather than using a plastic build on the inside where, you know, for moving it over time, it kind of like eats away at it and then you can eventually get drift on the thumbsticks. Hall sensors just use magnets to kind of tell the controller where you're pointing to, and they actually just feel better overall. When I go ahead and use the thumbsticks on both the Xbox and the 8BitDo controller, there is a huge difference in feeling in my opinion. I don't know if it's just the way they have it calibrated or whatever, or the way it's actually set up, not calibrated, but the way it's set up, but they do feel different, and I do love the feel on the 8BitDo Ultimate controller. As far as the design though, what I do hate is I do have the white model, and if you can see underneath the thumbstick, the white paint is kind of like smearing. So if you're really, you know, annoyed by stuff like that, that might be an issue. For me personally, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I'm not looking at the bottom of my thumbstick all the time, but that is a kind of dumb thing, I guess you could say. I wish they did have the metal ring as the Zen Pro controller does. If you remember seeing my Zen Pro controller video, I do like the metal ring around the Zen Pro controller, and I wish they really did that. Other than that, like, this controller, as far as build quality goes, is very, very premium. I wouldn't call this a cheap controller by any means. Like, honestly, this is probably better than a lot of first party controllers. Like, when you look at the Switch Pro controller and compare this, I feel like this is way, way better than that controller. The other thing I do want to mention though is there is no NFC support on this, which means if you're trying to use amiibos, well, guess what? Unfortunately, amiibos are not going to work on this controller, which does kind of suck. That does give a point to the Zen Pro controller, but overall, everything about this game, or rather, everything about this controller has been amazing, and I highly recommend this controller. Now, there are other parts in the packaging that the 8BitDo Ultimate controller comes with. For example, it does come with a docking station that also has a USB 2.4 gigahertz wireless adapter in it. And honestly, what's pretty cool about the docking station is rather than you having to separate that 2.4 gigahertz adapter and the docking station USB, you can actually put that 2.4 gigahertz adapter inside the docking station and then connect your docking station to your PC, and that will utilize the 2.4 gigahertz connection as well as power the docking station. So it kind of does everything all in one, which is pretty cool. You can also utilize that on the Switch as well if you wanted to do Switch. But for the most part, you can go ahead and use that on the PC. I really do like the way it actually just, you can kind of just hide that adapter. I have an Xbox adapter actually right here on my PC, and it kind of sucks that it just sticks out on the PC or it just takes up space. I do like that with the docking station for the 8BitDo Ultimate controller, I can kind of hide that adapter and just have that one USB cable that I utilize to, charge the controller with. That is pretty cool. I do think that they really thought a step above that, and I hope more docking stations do something similar. Now, when it comes to use specifically on PC usage, I've never had to configure anything outside of emulators, of course, but playing games like on Steam or Epic Games or EA or anything like that, I just turn on the controller and it just works. So there is no really configuration. There's no game that I've played so far that it just doesn't understand what type of controller it is. It just recognizes it as an Xbox controller. You do have to kind of trick your brain, if you wanted to, to go ahead and utilize it. But I mean, honestly, for me, I know where every button is. It doesn't bother me too much. Like if I see an A prompt, I kind of know, okay, on PC, that's going to be the B button on the 8BitDo controller. There is also some modifications you can buy, or rather some other buttons you can buy on 8BitDo's website. So you can swap out the buttons and make B say A if you prefer that. For me personally, I just leave it the way it is, use it the way it is. Looks great, works great, don't have any issues. I can trick my brain into thinking what button is what there, and I'm kind of used to it already. Now, honestly, in my opinion, I do think that this is the best controller made, as I do own also a DualSense controller, an Xbox controller. I do have the Switch Pro controller as well as the 8BitDo controller, and I just like it. Everything about it I like. It feels great, it works great, never have any issues. The battery life is amazing. That's probably something I didn't mention earlier, but the battery life is amazing. I believe you get somewhere around 30 to 40 hours of battery life. I mean, honestly, for me, it feels like forever because I do stream a lot. And when I'm using that controller, I don't really charge it. I mean, I barely charge it. I don't even put it on my dock because I'm more afraid of ruining my battery than anything else. Even though it's probably okay, I just don't put it on my dock at all because the battery lasts forever. I rarely have to charge my controller, which I do love. So if battery is a big issue for you, I think this is a huge plus. It's just kind of sad to see that the PlayStation controller is not that good in terms of battery life. I really wish that PlayStation would get their act together and put a very big battery inside their controllers. No excuses. I don't care about the tech inside your controller. I just want a good battery life. But yeah, there you have it. The 8BitDo Ultimate Controller. My favorite controller. I highly recommend it. If you play a lot of PC or Switch games, for sure the 8BitDo, I think it's the perfect controller to get. Definitely pick up one. I will have a link in the description below. Click on that link because anything you purchase through that link does help us out. Helps us get more products so we can get reviewing more, because nothing's being sent to us for free right now. We're going all out of pocket to kind of do all these reviews, but we do appreciate that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to also follow us over at Twitch and leave a comment in the comment section below. Are you going to pick up one? Do you already own one? Do you have another favorite controller? Just let us know in the comment section below. I really would like to know what you guys think about that. Thanks for watching. My name is James from the Random Encounter, and I'll see you guys next time.